What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 11 of my ranking and reviewing Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album, and then ranking those albums based solely on the guitar solos. This is part 11. I've already done 10 albums, not going in any particular order, though once I started going out of order, I did the last US 88 show, and then I just decided to get all the 88 stuff out of the way, including the stuff that was on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore. So I did 2 stages. So now this video and then the next 3 are going to be You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore videos. This is volume 1. So I'm going to go through the solos. There were only 7 on this release. Only 7 on this release. But man, some of them are whoppers. And then I will show you, I will rank the solos in order, and then I'll put the list on the screen. And then I will show you where this release, just in terms of guitar solos, and my favoritism of them, where it falls among the other 10 I've already reviewed. So eventually the list will be like 100 plus long. So anyways, let's get on with it. Number 7 is Oh No. This is a 69 version of Oh No. So you got a very pretty, straightforward, rooted, grounded, not going anywhere too crazy rhythm section, just doing that simple sort of Jimmy Carl Black type drum beat that goes on. Frank's very much 69 Frank soloing. Gets kind of interesting toward the end. Horns start coming in and things get a little more chaotic. Pretty straightforward. It's just kind of nice to hear the Mothers, kind of nice to hear him jamming it out. Not anything too crazy as far as a 69 solo goes. Not really anything too crazy as far as a Frank solo goes. Just that your typical what Frank was doing in this era. Not bad. It's got some good energy throughout, but I think of the ones on this album, it's by far my least favorite, though I don't think it's bad. So yeah, just because it's my least favorite doesn't mean I don't like it. Number 6, a solo I really do like, is the I'm the Slime solo. Both the I'm the Slime and the Big Swifty are from the Roxy shows, which at the time, these had not been released. Now, everything from the Roxy has been released on the Roxy performances, so we do have versions of this elsewhere. So, and what I'm going to do is I give all these numerical scores, so I'm going to try to forget what scores I gave this in Big Swifty, so when I eventually get around to Roxy, I'm going to see if I give the same solo a different score when I'm listening to it in context of the same tour, if that makes sense, where this is jumping all over the place. So I'm the Slime, sorry for the distraction, is number 6. You're very much in the pocket, in the groove. You're 73. 73 was the tour where you had the 2 drummers. You had Ralph Humphrey, you had Chester Thompson, and plus you even had Ruth on percussion. And so a lot of his solos are very like, it seems like you got a drummer on each side just like funneling him down this like groove alley, and he's like almost like snowboarding down, and he's very much within it. He's never really going out it, though he may like get some air and ride the lip and push those boundaries, but he's really not ever going to leave that loop. And this solo is very much that kind of an I'm the Slime solo. It's fun. It's a really, really sick run at the end of this that like kind of makes the whole thing worth it, though it's already worth it. But it's a good solo. Yeah, nothing to complain about. But that's number 6, I'm the Slime. Number 5, Mammy Anthem. The first solo on the release. It's from 82. It also was the show opening solo of that show. So the Mammy Anthem opened the show, and this was the solo. And it has that feel. And I think it might work even better opening a show than it does several songs onto a release, because by this time we've already had a sofa, Once Upon a Time sofa, to kind of flesh things out. But even on the release, it has sort of it feels kind of like a show opening solo. It's not too aggressive, though it is 82, so it's got some of Frank's just most interesting playing. It's a little more patient, a little more like just kind of laying the groundwork for like jumping off points for later on in the show where Frank could go crazier and could really go out there. It starts off kind of flirty, where he's just kind of toying around with like what he's going to do before he kind of gets into the meat of things. Very kind of has some very lyrical moments. Some really nice ideas that Frank is playing with. And because it's a show opener, it does almost feel like I don't want to say it's an opening theme, or anything like that, but it does seem like he attacks those opening solos with a little bit of a different attitude. Stinkfoot traditionally, Mammy Anthem here, a Zoodalure solo seems to have a different kind of vibe than things that would follow when it opens. Yeah, it's really good. He gets some good bending and good wailing in, as he always does, almost in anything. It's a really good opener. Could be longer. I think all Frank solos probably could be longer. But yeah, it's really good. I enjoy it. No way complaining. But on this release, it's number 5, Mammy Anthem. Number 4 is Big Swifty, also from the Roxy shows that the I'm the Slime was. These appear as back-to-back songs on the release. And it's When It Begins, you're coming out of, I think, a George Duke solo, keyboard solo, and then you get you get a solo, and then you get one of those weird little interludes in 73 where the band's like playing this really sort of percussion driven, like weird little vamp, weird little riff thing, little like 15-second passage that Frank uses either in the middle of solos or to segue between solos. And once that passage ends, or as we get towards the end of it, you hear just this wall of just like noise from Frank, and that wall kind of ushers him in, and he's just off kind of on the solo. Really, really, really nice sort of segue into his solo. Starts off great. He's tearing it up. He's going at it. He's just doing your typical in the pocket, in the groove, Big Swifty 73 thing. This one gets weirder than the I'm the Slime. The longer it goes on, he starts to get a little bit weirder. The rhythm section maybe gets a little bit weirder. We start to like maybe try to break away from this groove that we're in, but we stayed locked in it. But it's good, and it's got some really good ideas thrown around. And there is sort of a payoff where you reach that point where it thinks like, okay, the groove's not going anywhere, and Frank, what is he going to do? And at that point, almost every time when I listen to this, it's like, okay, now that was a weird little passage, and that was a weird idea. And so, yeah, he keeps it interesting, but it's a really good, just kind of aggressive 73 Big Swifty solo. And I'm eventually will like take a look at each tour as far as solo, since I just did the 88. And 73 is one of those I think is generally ranked towards the bottom, not because there aren't good solos, but because I do think Frank tends to be locked in to certain grooves, or like maybe limited because of the two drummers, not because there are two drummers, but because this is the first tour they're working together, and he's trying to figure out how to work with these two drummers, which are a lot different when he had two drummers or two percussionists early. And so I think it took him a tour to really figure out how to go out there. And I think in 74, when he would have these two, the guitar playing would be more interesting. But it'll be interesting to see when we get to 73, how listening to a bunch of those over and over now. I've done it before, but to revisit it. Anyways, I'm getting distracted a lot today, people. Sorry. Number 3, and I have number 2 and number 3 as numerically the same score. Both high scores, both excellent solos, both ridiculous solos, but mainly because of the groove of one, maybe because of the song of the other, I decided to rank them. Should be 2A and 2B, but at number 3, I have the Deathless Horsey. Fantastic. Emotional, dramatic. I think this might be a better version than the one on Shut Up and Play Your Guitar. Yeah, might be blasphemous to say that, but this is a really good. It's from 84. It is a great, long, it's indulgent. Frank sounds like he is absolutely loving playing it. It is everything you want out of a Deathless Horsey. And you get the Wackerman too in his rhythm section going crazy, which is a plus. No complaints. Like, this is like perfect. This is exactly like when this was released, like this solo made me go buy Shut Up and Play Your Guitar after I got this. And that was like, I need more of this kind of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. No faults, like an almost perfect, what you would expect from a Deathless Horsey solo. Like, all bow down to Deathless Horsey. And this is a song where you can't really take out like the song portion from the solo. They're very well connected, right? Just because of that repeating sort of vamp that gets played throughout the whole thing. That part. And so they work together, and Frank's solo just fits perfectly, and it's a perfect performance. Another great performance, probably guitar solo wise, maybe not as interesting guitar solo wise, the Deathless Horsey, because there's a little bit of emotionality in it, might ultimately be a better solo. But I enjoy the Zombie Wolf one just a little bit more, just because of that groove, because of that other swagger, because of the way Frank comes in immediately on the screaming, on the just the attack from the get-go, the complete screaming at the end, the sort of like in the middle, we get the rhythm section dropping into some sort of like chompy kind of funk in the middle that things get crazy. But yeah, like one of my favorite solos of all of his studio stuff is that Zombie Wolf solo from Overnight Sensation. And this one, like, it's an 82 solo. It is fantastic. Rhythm section is fantastic. He lives up to the Zombie Wolf hype on this solo. Absolutely fantastic guitar playing. Great song. Absolutely ridiculous groove. Like, you want to dance to this groove, man. It is just, this might be one of the best grooves he drops as far as like just having that swing and fantastic. Zombie Wolf, my number 2. But my number 1, and this might be a contender for, well, for one of the greatest solos of all time. It's The Torture Never Stops. It's from 78. The entire Torture Never Stops is like 15 plus minutes. The solo is like 8 minutes. It is Bozio O'Hearn on drums and bass. It is just one of the beastiest, most magnificent, most epic, most like, how can this thing keep... It is like what Barton Hall Morning Dew is to the Grateful Dead. This, I think, is to Frank Zappa. One of the most perfect, epic. It doesn't have that thrilling conclusion that Morning Dew has with that boom, that part, but it works pretty well. And there are moments when you're like, how is this going to get more intense? We're surely going back into the song at this point, but then we don't. And then we somehow find another level of intensity and another level. And I think this only works, and this only has, in this song in particular, because that O'Hearn Bozio rhythm section has this very like, to me, they're a very straightforward rhythm section, right? Where they will just, especially in something like Torture, when they know they have more than like a minute or two to like lay down a foundation, they'll lay down a foundation and then just kind of weird things slightly as we get towards the end of every cycle, but then almost like up the energy. Like Bozio just plays a little bit tighter and his fills are a little bit tighter and more like feel out of control or on the verge of out of control. Or Hearn's runs get a little crazier, but then he goes back really hard into like the main groove. And when they go back in after those weird sort of deviations, it just feels like the momentum and the acceleration and things are just like, it's like you're in a torture device and things are just tightening and getting crazier and crazier as the solo goes on. Like it's just, yeah, it's incredible. It is tense. It is just like, it is perfect for the song. It fits The Torture Never Stops, fits the words, it fits the vibe, it fits the idea of a dungeon, fits the idea of torture. But the solo itself is anything but torturous. It is one of the most magnificent, just compelling, just absolutely greatest pieces of like improvisational guitar art ever, if you ask me. When You Can't Do That on Stage 1 was released, let's stop that. We'll get to that later. But that's my number 1. Torture Never Stops, a must hear Frank solo. That's what this looks like. The You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 1. Those are the songs. I just talked about them. Your memory's not that short. And here is where it would fall if I did the albums. It's a number 1 because I put that Torture Never Stops solo, that Zombie Wolf solo, and that Death is Horsey solo really, really high up on the numerical columns of solos. And it beat Transfusion by more than like one little decimal point, just because those 3 solos, I think, are the Death is Horsey, Zombie Wolf, and the Torture Never Stops, are just so absolutely perfect and fantastic. And they might be better solos because of the song. And while I'm trying to ignore the song, you can't ignore it in Torture because that vibe is so recognizable. You can't ignore it in Zombie Wolf because of that groove. Can't ignore it in Death is Horsey. So it's an instance where it's 3 perfect song vehicles and 3 perfect solos. Plus, really, there's really nothing that's bad on here. It's just favorite to least favorite. So yeah, so far this is my favorite. Based on guitar solos only. Based on guitar solos only. But yeah. All right, but that's all I got for this one. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know what your favorite solos are. Let me know if you check these out and if you have an opinion about my opinion, or if my opinion influenced your opinion, or if I influence it in the wrong way and you're pissed about that. Subscribe, like, share, and most importantly, go listen to music. Go listen to This Torture Never Stops. If you've never heard this, The Torture Never Stops, you are missing out on one of the greatest improvisational moments in life, people. So go change that now. Talk to you later. Peace.